Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the bad books that I read in 2022, and there was quite a few. If I sound sick, it's because I am sick or recovering from being sick. That's also why there was not a video on Thursday. I fully intended to have a vlog of my Christmas celebrations with my family, and I was going to read a couple of books over that time and talk to you about them. Probably not update that portion of the vlog until I got back, but I was going to intersperse it over some B-roll that I was going to take, and then our flight got canceled, and so we spent the night in Atlanta, and we got a voucher for a hotel, but it took us until about 2 a.m. to get the voucher for the hotel, and then we had to wait at the airport on standby, and it was just a miserable experience. But because of that, I did not feel like filming at all. It was very stressful. We didn't get into Austin until like 20 hours after we were supposed to get there, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. It was fine. I had a great time, but that vlog did not come out, and I've been talking like this since we got back because I think I looked it up, and it's like the low humidity on airplanes makes you ill or something. So I've had like just a little cold. Took a COVID test, no COVID. I've been monitoring my temperature, no fever. So I think it's just a cold. It is quite annoying when I'm talking, so if you notice that, no you didn't. I am pulling out my Goodreads on my laptop because today's video I'm gonna go over all of the books that I did not like this year. I'm gonna go over all the books that I DNF'd. I'm also gonna go over all the books that I gave 1 or 2 stars to and talk about why I hated them so much. That's the plan for this video. I think I usually insert pictures here, but I could be mistaken about that. I am often wrong. So we're gonna start with DNFs. Okay, Marvel is going to sit right here. You can't even see him. Marvel is sitting right here. So if you see his head, that's what it is. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to talk about that I DNF'd this year was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which I was reading for Becca's Bookathon back in September. I will link the vlog. I could not get into this book for the life of me. It's about this guy who finds a book in a library. He's like studying something, finds a book in a library during his studies that doesn't have an author listed, and it's a bunch of stories, and then he realizes that some of the stories are about him. And then he is trying to find this door to the Starless Sea. So it's supposed to be like a portal fantasy, which is something that I used to think I really liked, but I read 2 books this year, another one I'll talk about later, that had like the similar premise, and I did not like. I finished the other one that I read and didn't like it very much. And then I started reading this one and was like, no, immediately, no, not for me. So that's a bummer. I did read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern a year or 2 ago, and I really, really liked that book. So I'm very surprised that I hated this book so much, but I just couldn't get through it. I couldn't get into it. It was not for me from start to finish. Well, I didn't finish it, so maybe it would have been for me at the end, but I doubt it. The next one I DNF'd this year was Beneath the Stain by Amy Lane. This was a male-male romance following this guy who is in a band. Hi. I can't remember his name because I didn't read this one very far at all. The reason I DNF'd this book is because it has explicit sexual contact. Like sex acts are explicitly described between this kid when he's like 14 or 13 and his older brother's friend who's like 18 I think at the time, and that really gave me the ick, and I couldn't finish it because of that, so I did not finish it. Also, it was poorly written, I thought, and just that's the book that also made me realize that I don't really love music described in books, because it's happened in other books where I'm like not really the biggest fan of that part, but this book in particular I just didn't like it all, and I couldn't finish it. I didn't care about it. He ends up, like, the main point of the book is that it's a romance between him and his band's manager, so it's still an age gap romance, but at this point I think he's 21, so it's a little more, like, palatable, but it just still wasn't for me, unfortunately. I also DNF'd this book called The Man Who Walked Away by Maud Casey, and this is about, God, how do I even describe it? So this guy who has this illness, and one day the illness is that he just starts walking and can't stop. And so it's told in a couple of different perspectives. So like we're getting his story from different perspectives, and also in like the present day, he's being institutionalized for this, and the doctor who is seeing him is trying to like explain what happened. This book had a couple of really descriptive parts about this man's penis, and I didn't want to read about it, so I DNF'd it. That's why. I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. And then the other thing I DNF'd was The Foxhole Court. I'm really sorry. I know a lot of people really like this series, All for the Game. It was not for me at all, but it's like a sports male-male bully romance, And all of those things were boring and I hated them. Also, I noticed this year I read at least 2, if not 3. 2 that I can definitely remember that I will talk about the other one in a minute. But I finished that one. They're like male-male romances where there's a mob involved. And I think maybe that's something that I hate. I don't know. But that's a thing in this book as well. And people love this book. I could not read it. It was just so poorly written and boring and bad. And just not for me. So I didn't finish that one either. And that's it, I think, for my DNFs this year. Oh, that's not true. I have one more book that I DNF'd called Psychedelics for Everyone, A Beginner's Guide to These Powerful Medicines for Anxiety, Depression, Addiction, PTSD, and Expanding Consciousness by Matt Zevin. I got this on NetGalley as an ARC, so thank you to the publisher for sending it to me. I DNF'd it. It's got really high ratings. I don't care about, psilocybin mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms that have medicinal properties. I didn't care that much about it. This was a wrong place, wrong time, wrong book, wrong place, wrong time, whatever that saying is. For me, I just couldn't get into it, and for that reason, I DNF'd it. And then also another book that's not on my DNF shelf for whatever reason, but I did DNF this year is Nomen by, what's that guy's name? Nick Harkaway. And this one was just too convoluted for me. I've described this book a couple times. It's like a dystopian set in like a near future world where we're being monitored all the time. You've heard it all before, but in this world, they can extract your memories when the police are investigating a crime and see the crime from your perspective. And then they did this to a woman and she died during this procedure, and that's never happened before. So then this other woman is brought in to investigate the team that did this and why that woman died, what happened. And she is reviewing the memories, but the memories aren't from that woman. They're from a bunch of other people. So it's is it multiple lives? And the answer is, I don't know. I never finished it. I don't know what happens. But it was so convoluted, and it took me forever to figure out that each of these snippets, because it's interspersed with this cop lady story. Please don't do that. This cop lady story and the different memories from different time periods and different perspectives, and I just really couldn't get into it. I hated it. I hate it so much. But it doesn't tell you that it's that woman's memory, so you have to figure it out for your own. Or maybe it did tell you and I'm just an idiot. I don't know, but I couldn't read that book. It was not for me. So there you have it. Those are the books that I DNF'd this year. That seems like a lot. I think I DNF'd a lot more than I normally do. Next, I'm going to talk about the books I gave 2 and 1 star, and I'm not doing this in any particular order. I guess this is reverse order that I read them in. Dune Messiah, I gave 2 stars. I gave Dune 2 stars last year when I read it, but I wanted to give Dune Messiah a shot, and I'm still saying that Dune might be a series that I can return to in the future and read, but it just genuinely is not for me. I don't think. I want it to be for me, but it's not. So I'm DNFing the series officially at this point. Now, if I try to read the 3rd one next year, don't say anything, okay? But I am tentatively DNFing the series. It's about Paul and this planet called Dune. It's not even what the planet is called. It's a planet called Arrakis. I really don't remember. But Dune is a desert planet. There's no water. So there's these people called the Fremen who have these extensive mask suit things that absorb their water and recycle it so that they can live, which is a cool concept. And Dune is also the planet that has this thing called spice, which has to be harvested, and so it's really, really valuable. So the first book is about a war that happens there, and then the second book is basically about the aftermath of the war that happens there. It's set 12 or 15 years later. I don't love this series. I don't think it's well written, and it's just not that interesting to me. So it's also kind of hard to follow for me. So maybe that's why I don't think it's well written, is because I feel in fantasy, I don't want to be necessarily led by the hand, but I do want to know what's going on. Oh, then the 1 star that I want to talk about, I read back in October, and I'll link the blog that I read this during, but it's A Well-Behaved Woman by Tori Sam Fowler. And this is, how do I even describe it? It's based on a woman who married into the Vanderbilt family. I don't remember her name now. Alva, I think it's Alva Smith, and she married into the Vanderbilt family. And if you don't live in the U.S. or know who the Vanderbilts are, they're this really wealthy family. They're one of the American dynasties, basically. There's a university named after them. There's all this stuff. But this was at a time when the Vanderbilts had a really poor reputation because their uncle or grandfather or somebody was doing some sort of what basically sounds like war crimes to me, selling weapons to an enemy of America in a war, I think is what happened. But this book is it was just the most boring, look at a woman's life. Like, it focused so much on like her planning parties and stuff, and she had a lot of interesting things going on, but none of the book focused on that. If you get down, you're gonna make a lot of noise, and I'm gonna have to let you out of this room. Is that what you want? Go ahead. Hold on. But yeah, Well-Behaved Woman. I wish I DNF'd it because I was so bored. But I kept thinking like maybe it'll get exciting, and I was looking forward to a certain part where she like takes a lover and like has a love story. I was looking forward to that part, and then that was also very boring and disappointing. So don't read that book. I hated it. Another book I really didn't like is The Need by Helen Phillips, which is a horror book that has a really interesting premise. It's about a woman who she's like struggling between motherhood and working, and like how your life changes when you become a mother, right? So she works as a, not paleontologist, paleobotanist, I think. So she's like studying really old plants, and they're at this dig site where there's a tunnel or like a hole in the ground, a crater. And I don't know if they have dug this hole or if the hole is naturally occurring, but inside the hole there are these objects that suggest that maybe there are parallel universes, because there's like an Altoids tin that's slightly the wrong dimensions, and a Bible that has like slight misprints of things that are actually in. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say exactly what's messed up about the Bible or not. I don't think it is, but I'm not going to tell you anyways. But she works at this place because of the Bible specifically. The place is being like targeted by different hate groups, I guess. And one day she goes home to her children. Her husband is out of town on a work trip. She goes home to her children, and they're playing hide and seek, and there's another person in her house. And it's about her discovering who that person is and what they want. And it's very intense for a little bit. And then it ends up being like kind of nothing and very like foo-foo, and I hated it. So this also has a lot of body horror involving like the physicality of motherhood. So like there's a lot of breast milk shooting out of places and breasts being sore, so she has to like squeeze it. Ugh. Another book that I really, really disliked that I'm shocked at, because it has like a pretty good, I mean, it's 3.83, so like not a bad rating, but like pretty good. It's A House of Ashes by Stuart Neville. And this is set in two timelines. So the first timeline is a woman who lives in this house in the 50s, and she's like clearly the child of someone who was kidnapped by the men who own this house. And then we follow the woman in present day whose husband just bought this house and what's going on with their relationship. And then there's like this slight, like maybe there are ghosts in the house, but that's never really addressed. It's just like mentioned, so I don't know if it was supposed to be a metaphor or not, but I hated it. And this book is literally just like women being treated really poorly and in terrible situations, and over and over and over and over and over again, like them getting abused and hurt and all this stuff. And I just, honestly, like there was not enough of a catharsis at the end for me to feel like the tension and like the suffering was worth it. And I was just confused by it and kind of like grossed out by it, and it just wasn't for me personally. Here's the next 2-star. That is the one that I was talking about when I was talking about the All for the Game series. And this is The Friend Scheme by Cale Dietrich, which is about, it's a male-male romance with these two guys whose parents are in like opposing gangs in Florida. And I don't know. I think part of my issue with this book was that I'm not its intended audience. I'm a 27-year-old woman, and it's written for teenage boys or girls, I guess, but like it's like a teenage book. But there were so many things in this book that bugged me, and like the characters being teenagers was not what bothered me about it, if that makes sense. So I don't know. This book just for me wasn't well edited. It was very repetitive. Like the same things were happening over and over again. The characters were saying the same things over and over again. Like specifically, it's, I don't know, because they find out that they're in opposing gangs, and they're like, I can't believe you're in this other gang. What am I going to do? Which was just annoying. And then also, like, the situations they were in, I didn't find were realistic. Which, okay, I can commit to the reality of a scene, but it just was too much for me sometimes. And there was just so much of that, like, I don't want to sound too pretentious, but I have noticed as I get older, YA novels have a really bad tendency to like specifically name drop things that are like the thing of the moment, and it just dates your book so bad. So like this one, they name dropped like My Favorite Murder, and a couple bands they name dropped, which wasn't that big of a deal because like you can listen to a band after a thing is over, and I guess you can listen to a podcast too, but I don't know people. I don't know. I know people still like My Favorite Murder. That's not the best example, but like just stuff like that. I just wish they would have just been like, oh yeah, I love podcasts. I like true crime podcasts, even if they said that. instead of being like, oh, my favorite murder, and like talked about that for a minute. It's just weird for me. The next 2-star we have, I'm really disappointed. I read this for a vlog as well, so I will link the vlog for you. But it's Devil House by John Darnell. I was really excited to read this book. It sounded really interesting. It's about a true crime writer who moves to a town and buys this house that these murders were committed in, the Devil House, and then is supposed to write a book about this house. And here's the thing. That premise was really, really interesting. What John Darnell did with this book was really interesting. I just don't feel like it was marketed well because it was marketed as horror, expecting there to be something with that, and there's really not. So it is about that, but it's also about this true crime writer analyzing what he does in sensationalizing these crimes and sensationalizing these killers, and also like these victims and their families, and like diving really deep into their backgrounds and all of that stuff, and how he wonders if it's like doing more harm than good. And he has this one case that he wrote something about that he just is haunting him, basically, that he's thinking about. And I think if it had been pitched to me that way and I understood what I was getting into, I would have liked this more, but it wasn't pitched to me that way. The other thing that I really hated about this book, and I don't understand why it was included, is there's like interspersed chapters written from the perspective of someone who thinks they're a knight, I think. I don't remember exactly like what the point of that was, but I remember thinking it was weird and I didn't like it. Another 2-star that I had, I don't remember anything about this book, was Call Me Zebra by Azarine Vandervliet Olumi. Jeez Louise, I genuinely don't remember what this book is about, but I will read you my review. There were a lot of good ideas in here, and the concept of the plot was interesting. I don't remember what the plot was, but the characters, my God, main character is insufferable, and the writing was too pretentious. Also, too many dream sequences. Just all in all, the components of this novel did not come together for me. So I don't remember what that book is about at all, but I did not like it. I gave it 2 stars when I read it in February. So there you have that. Another 2-star read that I had this year was Today Will Be Different by Maria Simple. I read Where'd You Go Bernadette last year and gave it 3 stars. And I just felt indifferent about the book. I felt like it wasn't what it said on the 10. These are both like 10, not 10, excuse me. These are both like sort of women on the brink novels. They both follow women who are married and don't feel very seen in their marriage. They live in Seattle, Washington, both of these like main characters, and they both have a child. I think this one it's a son, and then the other one it's a daughter who's like around the same age, but they have one kid who's like 8 or 10 or something like that. But I just don't think Maria Semple is an author for me. I don't think she writes books that I can relate to at this point in my life because I'm not in that like stage, and I don't really enjoy her plots that much. They're just kind of like chick lit-y fiction. But this one, what is I think she just like decides to stop doing all of the like menial chores around the house and see what happens. Kind of like in Where'd You Go Bernadette, she just like leaves to see what her family does without her. I don't know. I just felt like it was all over the place. Okay, and now we are down to my final book that I gave 2 stars this year, and that is What If It's Us by Becky Albertelli and Adam Silvera. This was the first book I read this year, and I hated it. I really disliked it. I listened to this as an audiobook. It's again a male romance, YA. It's about these kids who, they're in New York, and they have this actually really cute meet cute. So I think what happens is one of them is like a politician's or a lawyer's son, and the lawyer is doing work in New York, but usually they live in Georgia. I could be wrong about that, but I think. And the other one lives in New York. And they're both in line at the post office. I don't remember why the out-of-towner is there, but the guy who lives there is mailing a box of his ex-boyfriend's things to his ex-boyfriend's house. Meets this kid. It's like kind of cute. Then there's a flash mob, and they get separated in the flash mob, and they can't find each other again. So I think it's the out-of-town kid saw that he had like a coffee cup from a certain coffee shop or something like that, and goes to the coffee shop and puts up flyers asking him to call him. So that was really cute. But then these characters were just insufferable. They like wouldn't communicate with each other at all. I hated both of them, and they got into these situations because they weren't really communicating, where they would like jump to conclusions about what the other one was doing and like not stop to listen to each other. And maybe that's just a high school thing. It's not. People do that when they're adults. But like, I hated it. I could not stand it. I just found them so annoying. And so unfortunately, I really disliked that book. I just didn't like the characters at all, and they like tanked the whole plot for me, which was sad because I felt like it had good bones, but that was not for me. But there you have it. Those are all the books that I gave 1 and 2 stars this year. I was very disappointed by, and those are also all the books that I DNF'd this year that I did not even finish, thankfully. So let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books and have a differing opinion to mine, because I'm always interested to hear that. And I feel like there's always a couple books that I really hate that other people are like, no, I love that. I know The Starless Sea is one of those, but that's a mixed bag enough that I don't feel bad disliking it. But that's it. Also, let me know what your most disappointing read was this year, or like what book you hated the most, if you can remember. Thank you so much for sticking through this video. If you made it to the end, leave a coffee cup emoji in the comments down below, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!